July the 1st, meeting of the Paducah Planning Commission to order, and ask if you would stand with me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being with us tonight. Mr. Summers, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Benberry, Commissioner Carmen, Commissioner Griffin. Here. Commissioner Kaler.
Here.
Commissioner Morrison.
Here.
Commissioner Rhodes.
Here.
Chairman Wade.
Here. Our first item is the June 3rd, 2024 minutes, which I believe Commissioner Morrison has.
Yes, sir. I move that the reading of the minutes for June 3rd, 2024 be waived and that the minutes of said meeting, as prepared by staff, be approved as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any corrections, deletions, additions, or any manner of alteration that any commissioner would have? Hearing none, Mr. Summers, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Morrison.
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes.
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin.
Aye.
Commissioner Kaler.
Aye.
Chairman Wade.
Aye. Our next item is urban renewal petitions, which we have none. We have no continued petitions for the Planning Commission. We will alter our Planning Commission new petitions cases to accommodate a timing issue. And our first item will be PLT 2003-0002 on Old Highway 60. And Mr. Summers, would you enlighten us on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a final plat for 5345 and 5435 US Highway 60 West. And that's what these large plats in front of you are, in case you need to take a look at the larger ones. This is to create 6 commercial lots in Tract 2, which would be partially in Cracking County. The entire zoning of the site is Highway Business District, which allows all uses as far as residential and commercial. The area of this subdivision was annexed into the city in 2 phases in 2018 and 2020, and this particular preliminary plat was continued generally at the September 7th, 2003 meeting. And from the preliminary plat, this has been scaled back to just show the city portion of the site, and lots 1 through 4, which fronts on Old Highway 60, on Highway 60 West, is essentially the same in area and configuration. Lots 5 and 6 in the back are slightly different as far as configuration and size. All lots would meet the area requirements of 10,000 square feet and 75 feet of street frontage. These will be on private streets that will be maintained by the individual property owners. We do expect at least 1 new stoplight in the vicinity and potentially 2, according to Chief District Engineer Kyle Pote. The state is going to be putting in a stoplight just west of Tractor Supply, which is west of the site. But on the east side by O'Reilly's, a stoplight is being looked at right now, and he estimates it to be 90% likely.
And this has been in the works now for a couple of years. The preliminary was approved a while back, like Josh said, and we're just trying to get this first phase finalized for those commercial lots up front, and then once this is done, he probably will shift gears and look to develop the county side of the project.
I know it's a small picture from where you guys are, but those are the traffic lights you're talking about in that
Proposed,
one there?
yes.
Because it's not supposed to be on here, I understand.
Correct, yeah, those are going to be put in and maintained by the state.
Okay, it's all proposed at this point.
It's proposed.
Percent, and that's what, you got that from Mr. Pope?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
That was going to be my question, so, yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? I believe Commissioner Kaler has the motion, which we need to hear.
I move that this commission adopt a resolution approving the final subdivision of property located at 5345 and 5435 US Highway 60 West.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions? All right, Mr. Summers, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Kaler,
Aye.
Commissioner Morrison,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin,
Aye.
Chairman Wade.
Aye. All right. If you'd like for me, go ahead and sign that so you can be on your way. How many copies? I can only do 2.
Commissioner Arn, do the last one. Let's see. Yeah, right there.
I'm not dating them. You want me to date them?
I can date, it doesn't matter, I can date it later.
Get as many copies as you want.
Yes, sir. All right. Our next item of business involves zoning change, ZON 2024-0005 on McGuire Avenue. We'll hear from Mr. Summers, and then hear the motion, and then we will have a public hearing on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for 837 and 857 McGuire Avenue. The petition is for a rezoning from R4 High Density Residential Zone to M1 Light Industrial Zone. The current land use is a gym inside the previous church structure. The church was built in 1999 or 2000, and the gym moved in approximately May of 2019. The petitioners would like to utilize the vacant property north of the gym as mini storage units. The zone, however, on the future land use map is shown to be neighborhood commercial or neighborhood residential, which what that means is it accounts for all types of residential uses and residential adjacent, such as daycares, such as churches, such as more of a humanities-based type of land use. So it would not be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. There is no M1 zone that touches the site currently. The nearest M1 zone is 2,969 feet west of this site. So if just this parcel was to be rezoned, it would be considered a spot zone, which those have been frowned upon by the Kentucky courts. The site is surrounded on 3 sides by residential land uses, assisted living to the north, single family to the west, and multifamily structures to the south. And the way that our zoning code is set up is more in line from less dense uses to a higher intensity, which would go from our R1 low-density residential zone, which is a single-family zone predominantly, up to our industrial zones, which contains everything residential, everything commercial, plus uses such as wrecker services, the mini storage warehouses, sewage stations, stuff, and uses such as that. So by rezoning just this parcel, it would negate that hierarchy of uses between the R1 going up to the higher density zones. The only approved structure on the site, which was the church, which was granted by the Board of Adjustment on or about June 26 of 2000. There was no zoning approvals given after May of 2019, but there's been no complaints from the neighbors, so after speaking with our legal counsel, they can be in use at this time. However, there would be no zoning way to allow any kind of expansion. And the petitioner is here tonight as well, Mr. Chairman, to answer any questions that you all may have, but I'd like to turn it back over to you for the public hearing.
Thank you. Commissioner Rhodes, I believe you have the motion on this.
I do. I move this commission adopt a resolution recommending denial of the requested change from M1 Light Industrial Zone for property located at 837 and 857 McGuire Avenue. I further move this commission adopt the following findings of fact in support of said recommendation. Number one, proposed rezoning does not comply with City of Paducah Comprehensive Plan. Number two, the area is shown as neighborhood conservation on the future land use map adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. Number three, no M1 light industrial zone classification touches this site. The nearest M1 zone is more than a half a mile away. Number five, the site is surrounded on the north, west, and south side by residential uses. Number six, the M1 zone would leave the area vulnerable to more noxious land use over time, specifically manufacturing and towing record service would be of concern. The M1 zone would be negative to the hierarchy of zone classification by allowing incompatible uses adjacent to each other with no zoning buffer. Number eight, the existing zoning classification is appropriate. Number nine, there have been no major changes to the character of the area. And number 10, the current use of the site is a gym is non-conforming use that was not approved by the planning department and therefore does not justify allowing additional commercial or industrial uses.
Commissioner Rhodes, I believe you skipped number 4.
Oh, sorry. Don't put that in your notes, okay? Rezoning this site to M1 zone would constitute a spot zoning.
Thank you to both of you.
Thank
I
you.
got 90% of it right.
Yes, you did, more than 90. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll now open a public hearing on this and ask anyone who wishes to speak for or against to come to the podium, identify yourself by name as well as address.
My name is Steve Milam. I'm one of the owners of CrossFit Dig Deep at 857 McGuire Avenue. My residential address is 5989 North Wadesboro Road in Simpsonia. I'll pass these around, and I apologize. I didn't know there'd be quite this big of a crowd, so I didn't have quite enough of them. To start with, we would submit that the request for rezoning to M1 was improper. We have no intent to do any manufacturing, simply the storage buildings on the property. As such, we'd like to alter our request to be a B3 rezoning, which is much more in line with both the use of the property and the location within the city. There are 3 additional storage facilities within a 1-mile radius of this location, all of which are currently zoned B3, the closest one being at 800 McGuire Avenue, which is just approximately 1,000 feet southeast of our current facility. So that should take care of any spot zoning issues, being that close and being adjacent to it. Additionally, with the B3, we think that the storage facilities would be in accordance with the residential intent that the city has for the area, adding value to the residents both in the apartment buildings, in the residential care facility in the area, as well as the small homeowners, providing significant amounts of additional storage space for all those people. It would not have any type of negative impact on the residential community. So with that, we'd like to have our petition reconsidered as a B3. And then the alternative, if that's not acceptable, we'd like a conditional variance to allow us to proceed with construction on the site as it's currently zoned.
Okay.
Okay?
Before we address that, does anyone else wish to speak on this? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. and then defer to staff, I would think that we need to address this issue before we address
Right.
a different issue.
The applicant here has just now asked to change the nature of the request from rezoning from M1 as originally applied for to now changing to B3, which I'm going to suggest that we table this matter so that staff can consider that and make a recommendation to us based on that new zoning request. And he might need the applicant to submit more paperwork or change their application.
May require some notice to the neighbors of that change as well, so,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, if we table it, we can just pick it up off the,
Yeah.
will I need to renotice for a different zone?
Well, I think we might have to consider an entirely new application because the application submitted was from R4 to M1, and the notice sent out to adjacent property owners was stating that. So I think we might have to treat it as a brand-new application and restart the process.
The only concern that I have is that B3 does not allow for mini storage warehouse.
Well, there is that question, but that's really not in front of us at this moment.
So.
Yeah, we can either consider this one on its merits and go ahead and vote on it based on what we've heard in the public hearing and the staff report. And then, there is, for a particular property, in some circumstances, you can't rehear a zoning request again, but we can allow that. So we can, just with the understanding that we'll rehear it if a new application to B3 is.
Is there any cost burden that we would put upon the owner if we
I would treat it as.
rule on it and treat it as a new one?
If we rule on it, then yes, it will be new. But if we table it, I don't mind doing an addendum to resubmit to the board.
Yeah, I think tabling it is the right move right now in light of new information and a new request. That way staff can have time to process and make a recommendation to us on how to proceed.
Does that make sense? Because we don't want to spend your money unnecessarily. Would you come to the front and,
Yes,
so you're on the record? Identify yourself, please.
yeah, my name is Mark Buford, and I'm the accountant for KeyFit. The only reason we went to the M1 is after talking with Josh and stuff, that was the only thing that we could go to that allowed for mini storage. But after we looked at all the mini storages in the area, we found that all of them were in B3 zones. None of them are in M1 anyway, that are in that neighborhood or in similar areas. That's the only reason we went to the M1 classification. So if we go to B3, I guess the question is, would the board allow us to even build, because it's still not going to be in compliance with the zone.
Sure, and Mr. Buford, if I could shed a little light on that. The mini storage units on Ross Avenue, which is to the east of this, is in a planned unit development that was established 70s, 80s, somewhere in there. There was a site plan submitted, I think in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, for the two storage units inside the planned unit development. The planned unit development is what gives the Planning Commission discretion as far as land use. And with the site plan that was submitted at the time, the Planning Commission did approve that because of the designation and overlay of planned unit development.
And the only thing that is just right down the street too, there's a chamber storage on North 32nd Street that's in a B3 too, right across from Pizza by the Pound. You know, we're not asking for anything
Sure.
outside of what's already being done in the area, so that's.
And I can speak to Chambers a little bit as well. They was constructed in 57, and that was well before the adoption of the current zoning ordinance in 72, 3, somewhere in there. So that was built outside of what we have in place now, which I'm glad you brought that up to our attention. But that's what we call grandfathered in, where it's allowed to continue in use and be maintained until that use is no longer being conducted on that site. Then it has to come into conformance.
And then the only other question would be the one that was just constructed on Broadway, about 10th and 11th and Broadway, it's a storage, and it's all in B3.
No, that is industrial.
The GIS it showed is B3, but, okay.
It-
You know more than I do on that.
We had to approve it because industrial is right across the street and it It was contiguous to current industrial, is that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
that-
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you're talking about storage for, or the one beside
Paducah
it.
storage, it's like by
Yeah.
the green. there's
We had a rezoning case for that one.
Oh,
And we
okay.
extended the industrial zone.
Okay.
Well, I think it's really important that we consider all the relevant factors and present this application properly so that you're being treated fairly. And so that's why I think it's still important that we table this. I mean, as long
that's
as you
fine
don't
with
have any
us.
objection, that would make it where we can kind of get organized and planning department can inform the commissioners on what factors are considerate to a B3 rezoning rather than an M1, because it may not sound like it, but it changes things quite significantly.
Yeah, and the only reason we went with the request is after talking with Josh, they said that was the only thing we could do with the storage. And then, like I said, after checking around, we were just kind of asking to figure out what else we can do to put the property into use.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Is there a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table it.
Second.
Commissioner Rhodes made a motion, and Commissioner Kaler has seconded. Any discussion on the motion that would table this to, do we need to define a date certain for this to come back?
We could, since we have a limited time based on our bylaws, it would roll off if we didn't. So I would suggest the next meeting, which I'm gonna have plenty of time to go through this and digest it and redo the staff report. So I'd say the next meeting would be fine.
Or you are with your motion saying it's tabled until the next regular meeting?
That's fine.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It's all right.
Trey did that. Okay, and you're okay with saying it, so we will accept it as that.
Okay.
And whenever you're ready, please call the roll.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin. Aye. Commissioner Kaler,
Aye.
Commissioner Morrison,
Aye.
Chairman Wade.
Aye. Motion is, or the item is tabled. I have nothing else on the agenda, and therefore I'll declare this meeting adjourned, and that our next meeting is August the 5th, 2024. Thank you all.
In a month.
5:53.
All right, so